to be aware of. Next I'd like to introduce Andy Tetmar, Technical Director of Hybrid Multi-Shot. It's going to give you a quick rundown of multi-shot moulding, how it could add value to your business.
Thank you.
Lucy.
Hello everyone, good morning. Okay. In case you're wondering why George W is up there, I did a quick search to see, I typed in dazed and confused and his face came up. It seemed to sum up questions. So I wanted to start with a couple of questions really. What is two-shot moulding, and is it worth all the effort? Or what do we do? Why do we do it? What's in it for you? Now, two-shot components rely on more complex mould tools, more complex moulding machines, higher levels of skill from tool makers and from machine setters. So surely this all comes at a high price. So is it really worth all the extra effort? Hopefully I'm going to demonstrate that the real question is, why is it not being done more often? Why aren't there more two-shot products out there? Because I think that I can prove that that cost is a bit of a isn't necessarily the true value that you get. Now, again, on the internet, I needed to get a source for the font of all knowledge, so I looked on Wikipedia and came up with the following quote: "Two-shot moulding is a technology in which different polymers are injected into the same mould, thus combining desired properties of plastics. This means that a single moulded component can benefit from different features such as colour, feel or mechanical properties." So let me start with a quick explanation of how at Hymid we produce our two-shot components. Now our machines are made by Arberg, and on first sight it's pretty much from here down is a standard moulding machine. We've got an additional injection barrel on the top of the machine, vertically mounted, that injects material onto the top of the mould tool. So this additional barrel delivers a second coloured plastic or a completely different polymer. Also, not shown on this picture, but our machines have a rotary table mounted on this part of the moving side of the tool that rotates the moving half of the mould tool, so that after the first part is moulded, it's transferred automatically into the second cavity. Now I've got a short animation which is on our website. So hopefully this will work. We'll zoom in a minute and you'll see that you've got the two different materials. I don't know, the colour's not very good, but it's red and black, red and white I think. So as the tool closes, the first shot's moulded as it would in a normal part, but it's not ejected, it's actually rotated, as I said, on the table. And then the second material is moulded over the top and the part is ejected. You will see here that there's the first shot for the next sequence in that cycle is already in place. So it's a continuous process. Every time the tool opens, a two-shot part comes out and a single shot part's ready for the next time. So to summarise, what we're basically talking about here is an automation of the overmoulding process. It could be done on two separate machines with individual mould tools on each machine and then an operator or a robot to load the parts into that second machine. But if it was done that way, then you would affect the bond strength between the two materials. Factors that could change that, the time between the two processes, contamination or water absorption by the first part. So it's really important that that we look at the consistency that two-shot gives you, especially important if the part is waterproof. So by going through this process, you've got the best possible bond between the materials. You actually get a chemical bond that the second material melts the surface of the first material as it comes in, and it's effectively one part made out of two different materials. Now, this brings me on to the much more important question of why do we do this? What's in it for you, if you like? Because two-shot moulding does have a reputation for being an expensive option, and it is true that the mould tools and the components will cost 30 to 40% more than the single-shot equivalent. But it's not really the whole story, as it's important that we look at the benefits and value those properly before a realistic comparison can be made. With this in mind, I've taken an existing two-shot product that we've been making for a number of years and created a single-shot equivalent so that we can actually make a comparison for the relative costs. Now, we've been producing this Tetra 3 gas detection alarm case for Procon detection instruments for quite a while now. As the glove in the photo indicates, the device is used in lots of hostile and industrial environments, anywhere where there's a danger of dangerous gases building up. This will emit an alarm if it detects any of up to 3 dangerous gases. In other words, it's a modern day canary. The user's life actually could depend on this being a reliable piece of equipment. So it's essential that the clamshell that we make protects the electronics, the display and the sensors inside in its heart. Again, as the glove suggests, it's not going to be treated like a Stradivarius. It's got to be a tough piece of equipment. Now, this is a view of how we make the parts at the moment. You've got the inside, the first shot is made out of polycarbonate. So the windows are integrated. This also gives you the structural strength to support the electronics that then get mounted on the inside. Now this is overmoulded. The second shot is an elastomer, a thermoplastic elastomer, or TPE. Now that serves 3 purposes in this case. It gives you impact resistance to protect the relatively brittle polycarbonate. It provides a flexible membrane here on the button so that there's no danger of water ingress when the button's activated. And it has a seal around the outside which goes in the groove in the polycarbonate for when the 2 halves are assembled. This product is certified to IP67, which means that it has to be watertight up to a depth of 1 metre of water. That's quite a big ask for a product that doesn't have any additional sealing in it, but actually that is achieved on that part. Now we move into my version of this as a single shot part, and on first impression is that it hasn't really changed much. I've envisaged moving this over to an ABS, which is a tough general purpose plastic. Of course you lose the advantage of having the soft touch, but it's a tough plastic that would protect the parts. Now when I explode that, we now see excuse me, we now see how many separate components we need to achieve the properties that we had as standard with the 2-shot variant. We've got windows, seals, buttons that were integrated into the 2-shot variant now have to be produced separately and assembled as a post-mold second operation. Now, the polycarbonate parts, these windows, are now moulded separately, and then they have to be glued or ultrasonically welded in place. For the purpose of this example, I've conveniently ignored the cost of the equipment that would be required to do that, but it would also need some sort of waterproof testing after assembly to make sure that those windows were fitted to the standard that's required. You've also got to think about the fit of this button. That is now a separate part. If it's made too tight, you'll never be able to get it in, but it's also a possible path for water ingress. Again, you probably need to do some testing after that was made. Now finally, I'd like to draw your attention to the addition of these rubber washers. If you look at the samples that are lying around, you'll see on the back, at the bottom of each one of these holes, in fact, if we move on to the next slide you can see it even clearer, these washers are actually integrated and they're part of the skin that goes on the outside. If they weren't there, they'd have to be fitted separately. It's basically another example of sort of, it's a bit of a freebie really. The 2-shot moulding is giving you those washers without you having to purchase them separately and make sure that they're fitted. Of course, if they were separate, you then got the danger that someone forgets to assemble them or one of them falls out, and then again another leak path. Now I've got the exciting bit, I've got an Excel spreadsheet for everyone, and I know how much you enjoy looking at numbers, but I think it's important to actually make a sort of comparison to just look at what sort of costs we're talking about. I have got Vicky to do it, we'll be doing a test later, so check that you've got all the numbers in your head. you'll be pleased to know I'm not actually planning on going through every one of these, but basically the highlights. The tooling cost, I've actually got a little bit more cost because I've got an additional tool in here to make the polycarbonate parts and the buttons, but there's not a lot of difference basically. The two-shot tools would cost more than single-shot variants, so that's one of the perceptions, but actually I've got more cost for the single-shot version than I would for the two-shot that we're currently making. The part count's gone up, so of course that's additional parts. The assembly is another real thing. That the assembly, we are making these parts at the moment, we're inspecting them, packing them, selling them. If you go to a sous shop, you've got all the extra operations. So that sort of brings us on to the headline numbers, if you like. Two-shot variant comes in at £4.78. And I consider this quite a conservative estimate, but I've come in at £6.45 to actually make that as a single-shot variant with actually less features than you get with the two-shot. So it would cost more than £1.67 more to make this as a single-shot part. What I've done there is I've amortised the tooling cost over 50,000 parts. So over 50,000 parts, you've got an extra cost to go down the single-shot route of £83,500. So it does make you ask the question: is two-shot an expensive option? I think you'll agree that that then brings us back to the question: why isn't it being done more? And we'd like to sort of help with that process. To summarise, I'd like to I hope that I've demonstrated that if it's the right application, then two-shot moulding really can offer a superior product advantages at actually a really cost-effective solution. So it brings me on to the final thought. Just because you've always done something a certain way, I don't think that's necessarily the best way of doing it. And I did find this image which summed that up perfectly. Just because you've always done it doesn't mean it's incredibly stupid. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Andy. Okay, I hope you now all understand a bit more about two-shot moulding. We've got Mr. Stuart Offer from GT